Hey Susie, it's James.
Hey, nice to meet you.
How was your weekend?
It's pretty good. How about you?
Good, good. So we're a little short on time. I think you're going to be doing a behavioral tomorrow.
Yeah.
So today we're going to jump right into the case.
Sounds good.
Great, great. You all set? Okay.
Yeah.
So, our client is a major retailer of largely appliances, both small and large. They've been experiencing slow growth recently, and profitability is less than expected. The CEO has hired us to determine what the cause of the low profitability is and, if possible, come up with ways to address it. For some additional background information, the retailer has 15 stores that are located in shopping malls in both urban and suburban areas.
Okay. So, in terms of the mix of urban and suburban stores, how many are in each?
It's about 50-50, so there are 7 stores in urban and 8 in suburban.
Okay. And when you mentioned low profitability, what is the current profitability in comparison to what you're aiming towards?
So the average per store profitability is $25,000 a year, and the industry benchmark is about $100,000 per store.
All right, so significant difference in
Very
terms of hoping for some drastic improvements here. That's great. All right, so other than just determining, what the issues are, you're also, I'm guessing, looking for solutions to this problem as well.
Exactly.
All right, so do you mind if I just take a moment here?
Sure thing.
All right. So I see this as a two-part framework, starting off with why is there this discrepancy or lack of strong profitability. So looking at the drivers behind profitability to figure out what that issue is. And then second to that is once we've figured out the why is how can we improve that. So looking at the drivers and determining ways to hopefully gain some insights on how to get better at it.
Sounds good.
All right, so let's move in right into profitability first off, and we'll start off with taking a look at the revenue and cost drivers. So really what I want to get a sense at first is just really qualitatively what is driving the business and getting a better understanding of what's behind the business, and then hopefully from there we can move into some of the numbers behind profitability.
Sounds good.
Okay, so when you mention major retailer of appliances, is this similar to like a Best Buy or Future Shop type of company?
Yeah, pretty close. Our client doesn't actually sell much electronics. You can picture it as largely, say, for large appliances, washers and refrigerators, and
Okay.
small appliances are toasters and blenders.
Okay. And you mentioned, in terms of like actual revenue drivers, I would imagine these small and large appliances are probably the biggest revenue drivers in the store, but is there anything else such as like extended warranties or things like that that the company offers?
Interesting. They don't offer warranties. Their only revenue drivers are sales of these appliances.
All right. And we talked about there's urban and suburban stores. Is there any difference in terms of the competition in the urban and suburban markets, or?
Yeah, there's different competition in the areas, but the impact is largely the same.
Okay. So while we're on the topic of the stores, and we talked about competition not being necessarily an issue, how do the stores actually work? So is there like urban stores cater to the urban market, suburban stores cater to suburban market, similar to like some grocery stores where they have smaller stores and larger stores?
Actually, it's the opposite. The stores are identical in both locations. Same floor plan and same mix of products that are carried.
Okay. All right. So that potentially could be an opportunity that we maybe want to flesh out in more detail as we go through the case, but
Okay.
I think we have a good idea of what the main revenue drivers are and some of the underlying factors behind those revenue drivers. But what I'd like to do now is to take a look at some of the cost drivers, and I think an easy way to break this down is to look at the variable and fixed costs for each store location.
Okay.
So variable costs, I would imagine, would be things like labor, things like distribution, transportation, the actual buying the products from suppliers and so on. Is that about accurate?
Yeah, that's primarily it. We also include promotional discounts as a variable cost, marketing cost, but what you've identified are the important ones.
Okay. And from a fixed cost perspective, I imagine this would be like renting of the stores from the shopping malls and probably greater marketing and admin type costs, is that?
Yeah, there's also utilities and insurance to consider as well, but rent is by far our highest fixed cost.
Okay. All right. Okay, so given that we have a general sense of how the company operates and what some of the main components are in terms of revenues and costs, so what I'd like to do is to take a look at both the urban and suburban stores and determine what profitability looks like, and maybe there's some differences between the stores, maybe not, and go from there. So let's start off with the urban store locations. And I think the best way to drive at profitability is to look at each of the different appliance types separately, so small and large.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can look at the quantity sold, we can look at the price charged, the variable cost, and then, price minus variable. And then at the end, we can take a look at what some of the fixed costs are associated with the goods.
Great.
So in terms of quantity, do we have the information in terms of how many are sold in the urban market?
So we sell 2 large appliances per day on average and 50 small.
Okay, this is per day. And what's the price?
So for a large appliance, it's $750.
Mm-hmm.
For a small, it's on average $50.
Okay. So, and how about variable cost?
On average, for a large appliance, it's $600, and for small, it's $45.
Okay, so we can see just high level before even doing any calculations that we obviously sell less of the higher cost, higher margin product than the lower margin product. But let's work out the numbers here. So we know that we're getting $5 per product for the small appliances, and we're getting $150 for the large. And if we times that by the amount sold per day, so in the case of small, 5 times 50, we get 250 in profitability per day. And for large, we get 150 times 2 sold per day, which gets us to 300. So an overall profitability per day before fixed costs are 550 per day. And if we're to work that out on a yearly basis, I'm just going to round up to 600 just to make calculation easy on myself. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm. Sure. And
round the days to 360.
Sounds good.
And what we get here is 6 times 3 is 18, 21,600. And what are the fixed costs associated?
300,000 in the urban area.
300,000. Okay. So, seems like an awfully big discrepancy. Let me, if you don't mind, I'm just going to check through my numbers again and make sure I haven't made any errors.
Sounds good.
So we have comfortable with the profit per day. Oh, you know what it is? I think I've missed a 0 off of the per year cost. So even still, we're still running at a loss of 84,000 per store per year. But not quite as bad as, over almost $300,000. So definitely we can see that one of the issues looks like it's in our urban stores. If we look at what average profitability per store is, we see is 25,000, and we can see the urban stores have a loss of 84,000. So I think there may be some insights we can gain from looking at the rural stores as well, just to see maybe what they're doing right and how the urban stores can in fact maybe adopt some of their practices. So let's do the same for the rural segment. So we can see that essentially the profit is 124,000 for the rural stores versus a loss of 84,000 for the urban stores. And really, I mean, there's two factors to me that it looks like are contributing to this. Number one is the product mix. So we can see that there's a big difference in terms of what products are sold per day in the rural stores versus urban stores, much more large appliances. And also the fixed costs. So fixed costs are $100,000 more expensive in the urban stores to rural. And I think this is really biting into the bottom line for the company.